Hey guys, welcome back to more relationship drama stories. In this video, my smug brother banned me from the honeymoon I paid for. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled, Tow My Car? Enjoy the rest of your construction work. Let's start by painting the picture. Over the course of the last couple of months, there's been ongoing construction work for a new building that's being, well, built on our street. We are living on Malta, which is an island in Europe, and for those that don't know anything about this tiny island, it's that things are happening incredibly slow here. The contractors that have been working on this building have left us residents in a constant state of distress due to the constant excessive loud noise that has been our life on a daily basis for months. They have ignored several rules and regulators relating to permits to close off roads, blocking parking spaces, etc. In times when they haven't had permits to block parking spaces, they have even simply used cinder blocks to block off access to parking spaces the contractors would need the following day. The street is left in a complete mess after their work for the day is done. There's constant dust flying around in the air due to their ongoing work efforts, and one day they even blocked the entire street without having the appropriate permits for doing so. This has all been okay as much as it can be. We have gone on with our lives and just hope that it's gonna be over soon. This was our mindset until this morning when we found out that our car had been towed. They had not put up the no parking sign 48 hours in advance as is required. And we now had to pay over 200 euros as a fine, which we now will have to dispute and hope that they will refund the fine. Cue our petty revenge. These contractors are ignoring so many rules and regulations on a daily basis, and considering that either me or my wife work from home all days of the week, rotating office days, we have full view of what's going on in the street on a daily basis. Contractors are putting cinder blocks on parking spots to reserve them without proper permits. Well, suddenly we have all the time in the world to go downstairs and remove said cinder blocks. Instead of just removing the cinder blocks to the side, we will also dispose of them so that they cannot carry out this practice in the future without having to get new cinder blocks to do so with. Heavy machinery is being used on the street before and after permitted time according to permits. Well, police and local traffic enforcement number is on my speed dial. I even must have misplaced a pack of eggs that I put aside while walking past the construction area while tying my shoes and couldn't find them again. And oh boy, I hope they don't spoil and start smelling under the intense Maltese sun and heat. I've been lurking this subreddit for years and I feel like I'm currently experiencing one of these stories in real life. I'm actually low-key excited. And yeah guys, if you ever had any petty revenge happen in your life, let me know about it in the comments, I'm really curious. The next one is the title story, which is titled, Smug Brother Banned Me from Honeymoon I Paid For. So growing up, I always thought my little brother Ryan was the golden child. He was charismatic, popular, and seemed to breeze through life with an ease I could only dream of. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the planner, the warrior, the one who always played by the rules. As we got older, the differences between us only seemed to grow. While I worked hard through college, maintaining a long-distance relationship with my high school sweetheart John, Ryan partied his way through a series of expensive schools, leaving a trail of maxed-out credit cards and concerned administrators in his wake. By the time John and I got engaged, Ryan had cycled through half a dozen jobs and was living rent-free in our parents' basement. But despite his shortcomings, I could not help but love him. He was my brother after all, and I kept hoping that one day he would grow up and get his act together. That is why when John and I started planning our dream honeymoon to the Maldives, I had the bright idea of inviting Ryan and his latest girlfriend Laura. I thought maybe seeing how happy and stable John and I were, it would inspire him. Plus, I reasoned, how much trouble could he possibly cause on a tropical island paradise? Well, looking back, I cannot believe how naive I was. I should have known that Ryan would find a way to make our honeymoon all about him, but hindsight is 20/20, and at the time all I could see was the possibility of finally bridging the gap between us and becoming the close-knit family I had always wanted. So then, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, I started planning what I hoped would be the trip of a lifetime. The Maldives. Just saying the word conjured images of turquoise waters lapping at pristine white beaches, luxurious overwater bungalows, and days filled with nothing but sunshine and relaxation. It was the honeymoon destination, the ultimate escape for newlyweds, and it was where John and I were headed. We had been meticulously planning this trip for months ever since John popped the question on our anniversary. Every penny we saved, every extra shift we picked up went towards making this honeymoon unforgettable. And it was not just a honeymoon, it was a celebration of overcoming years of long distance while we were in college, of finally landing our dream jobs, of proving everyone wrong who said that we would not last. "Are you sure about this, babe?" John asked one evening, his brow furrowed as he scrolled through our meticulously crafted itinerary. "About what?" I asked, glancing up from my laptop where I was researching the best snorkeling spots. "Inviting Ryan and Laura," he said, his voice hesitant. "I know you want to, but are you sure it won't complicate things?" My heart sank a little. John knew me just too well. He knew how much I loved my brother, even if he could be a real piece of work sometimes. Ryan had this uncanny ability to turn any situation into the Ryan show, always needing to be the center of attention, the life of the party, the one everyone envied. And it was not just attention, it was this air of entitlement he carried, this belief that the world owed him something. "He's my brother, John," I sighed, closing my laptop and joining him on the couch. "And Laura seems nice. I just want us to be a family, you know, and besides, it's the Maldives. How could anyone be anything but happy there?" John wrapped his arm around me, his expression a mixture of love and apprehension. "I know, babe, I just don't want anything to ruin this for us. This trip is important." And he was right, of course, but I was determined to make this work. I wanted my brother to experience the magic of the Maldives, to see that there was more to life than his own little bubble of self-importance. Plus, I'd be lying if I said a small part of me didn't relish the idea of Ryan seeing how well John and I were doing, how happy we were. Maybe, just maybe, it would inspire him to get his own act together, so I pushed aside my reservations and sent the fateful text message. "Hey bro, John and I are planning our honeymoon to the Maldives in June. We would love for you and Laura to join. We are covering everything, flights, accommodation, the works." The response was almost instantaneous. "Whoa, Maldives? You guys are the best. Of course we're in. Laura's gonna flip out when she hears about this." I smiled, my heart feeling lighter. Maybe this was gonna be okay after all. Maybe this trip would be the thing that finally brought us closer as a family. Oh, how naive I was. The moment I sent that text, I unwittingly unleashed a force of nature that would threaten to turn my dream honeymoon into a living nightmare. Ryan, true to form, was ecstatic about the trip, but his excitement quickly morphed into something else, something that sent shivers down my spine. It started subtly at first. He would casually suggest that we look into upgrading our flights to first class. "Come on sis, it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip." Or hint that maybe we should consider booking a private villa instead of the overwater bungalow we had already chosen. "I heard the privacy is amazing and you guys deserve to splurge a little." I brushed off his initial suggestions, attributing them to his usual flamboyant personality, but as the weeks passed, his demands became more frequent and more insistent. He would call me at all hours of the day, bombarding me with links to expensive excursions and activities, complaining that the itinerary I had painstakingly created was not exciting enough. "Ryan," I said through gritted teeth one evening, my patience wearing thin after he had spent the last hour trying to convince me to scrap our planned scuba diving trip in favor of chartering a private yacht. "This is our honeymoon, remember? We want to relax, enjoy the beach, maybe do some snorkeling. We are not looking for a non-stop party here." There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sigh. "Look sis, I know you're trying to be all romantic and stuff, but this is the Maldives. You gotta live a little. Besides, Laura really wants to experience the nightlife there. She heard it's amazing." "Laura can experience the nightlife on her own time." I snapped back, my voice sharper than intended. "This trip is about John and me, remember?" Okay, chill out," Ryan said, his tone laced with annoyance. "It was just a suggestion. No need to get all bridezilla on me." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. What had I gotten myself into? Things came to a head a few weeks before the trip. I was finalizing the last of the bookings, my credit card practically glowing from overuse, when I received a notification from the travel agency. My heart stopped. The subject line read, "Important information regarding your honeymoon booking." With trembling fingers, I clicked on the email. It was a cut message informing me that our reservation at the resort had been cancelled. Panic surged through me. Had there been a mistake? Had the resort overbooked? I immediately called the travel agency, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the agent said after putting me on hold for what felt like an eternity, but it seems the reservation was cancelled by someone named Ryan, last name. My blood ran cold. Ryan. It had to be. But how? Why? I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I was about to call Ryan and demand an explanation when my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. It was from him. "Hey sis, I just wanted to let you know that Laura and I decided to change things up a bit for the honeymoon. We cancelled the old booking and upgraded us to a private villa at a different resort. Meanwhile, you will stay at a nice cozy one-bedroom apartment I found on Google Maps. We just didn't want to be too close to you guys, you know, you're always so negative. And therefore, we banned those negative thoughts, aka you, from our dream vacation. Don't worry, it's all taken care of. See you soon." Rage, pure and unadulterated, coursed through my veins. He cancelled our honeymoon? Our honeymoon that we were paying for? The honeymoon I had poured my heart and soul into planning? I called him immediately, my voice trembling with fury. "Ryan, what have you done?" "Relax, sis," he chuckled on the other end of the line. "It's a surprise. You will love it. This place is even better than the last one. It's super quiet and serene. You won't be annoyed by any other people there." "We did not want this, Ryan," I screamed, my voice cracking with emotion. "We wanted the overwater bungalow. We wanted the itinerary we planned." "Look, I'm trying to do something nice here," he said, his tone hardening. "Laura and I thought you guys deserved an upgrade. Consider it a wedding gift from your favorite brother." "It's not a gift if we didn't ask for it," I retorted. "You cannot just cancel our honeymoon and rebook it without our permission. And how did you even manage to do that?" "Did you use my credit card?" "Don't worry about the details," he said dismissively. "Just pack your bags and get ready for the best honeymoon ever. You can thank me later." He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. He had actually done it. He had hijacked my honeymoon, but I refused to let him get away with it. This was not just about a honeymoon anymore, it was about principle. It was about Ryan's blatant disregard for my feelings, his audacity in thinking that he could control my life. I took a deep breath, composing myself. I might have been furious, but I was also methodical. I knew I could not let my emotions get the better of me. I needed a plan, a way to teach my smug, entitled brother a lesson he would not soon forget. And as I sat there staring at the cancelled booking confirmation, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan that would not only salvage my honeymoon, but also bring Ryan's world crashing down around him. The first thing I did was call the airline. Fortunately, because the tickets were booked under my name and paid for with my credit card, I was able to cancel Ryan and Laura's flights without a hitch. I then called the original resort and explained the situation, emphasizing that Ryan had acted without my permission. To my relief, they were understanding and agreed to reinstate my original booking. The next part was a little bit trickier, but I was determined to make Ryan sweat. I contacted my credit card company and reported the unauthorized use of my card for his surprise honeymoon upgrade. I provided them with all the details, the cancelled booking, the text messages from Ryan, just everything. I knew it would take some time for the investigation to be completed, but I was confident that I had a strong case. Meanwhile, I decided to have a little fun. I sent Ryan a text message pretending that I was going along with his plan. "Hey bro, thanks again for the amazing surprise, you're the best." His response was almost immediate. "No problem sis, told ya you would love it." I smirked, picturing his smug face as he read my message. He had no idea what was coming. The next few days were a blur of activity as I repacked our bags, rearranged travel plans, and fielded concerned calls from family members who had heard about Ryan's generosity. I downplayed the situation, assuring everyone that everything was fine and that Ryan was just trying to be helpful. Then finally, the day of our departure arrived. John and I were at the airport waiting to board our flight when I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Is this OP?" a stern voice asked. "Yes, it is. This is Officer from the City Police Department. We need to speak with you regarding a case of credit card fraud." My heart skipped a beat. It was working. "I'm at the airport right now, about to board a flight," I said, feigning confusion. "Can this wait?" "I'm afraid not, ma'am," the officer said. "We have reason to believe that you may have information relevant to an ongoing investigation involving your brother Ryan." I glanced at John, who was watching me with a mixture of concern and amusement. I subtly mouthed the words, "It's happening," before turning back to the phone. "My brother?" I asked innocently. "I don't understand. What is this all about?" The officer proceeded to inform me that Ryan had been detained at the airport after attempting to check in for a flight to the Maldives using a ticket that had been cancelled. It seemed that my report to the airline had raised some red flags and they had alerted the authorities. "We've also been in contact with your credit card company," the officer continued. "They have informed us that you reported an unauthorized use of your card by Mr. Ryan for a significant amount of money. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's right," I said, my voice trembling with faint distress. I cannot believe Ryan would do something like this. He told me he was surprising us with an upgrade for our honeymoon, but I had no idea he was using my credit card without my permission." "We understand, ma'am," the officer said sympathetically. "We are going to need to ask you some questions about your brother's financial situation and his history of using your credit card." I spent the next hour on the phone with the officer, providing them with all the info they needed to build a solid case against Ryan. I told them about his history of financial irresponsibility, his constant need to one-up everyone, and his blatant disregard for other people's boundaries. I even mentioned his smug comment about it being his honeymoon. By the time I hung up the phone, my flight had long departed, but I didn't care. I was just too busy savoring the sweet taste of justice. The fallout from Ryan's arrest was swift and brutal. It turned out that this was not the first time he had pulled a stunt like this. He had been skating on the thin ice financially for years, relying on handouts from our parents and racking up debt he had no intention of repaying. The credit card fraud charges, coupled with his history of financial mismanagement, painted a damning picture. He was denied bail and spent the next few weeks in jail, his smugness replaced with a potent cocktail of fear and regret. Meanwhile, John and I enjoyed our rebooked honeymoon in the Maldives. It was everything we had ever dreamed of and more. We snorkeled in crystal clear waters, dined under the stars, and spent our days lounging on pristine beaches, far away from the drama that Ryan had created. We even made sure to send him a postcard. The legal battle dragged on for months, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Ryan, facing overwhelming evidence and a mountain of debt, was ultimately found guilty of credit card fraud and several other financial crimes. The financial strain proved to be too much for him to bear. He was forced to declare bankruptcy, his dreams of a lavish lifestyle funded by other people's money going up in smoke. The experience changed our family dynamic forever. Our parents, initially hesitant to believe that their golden boy was capable of such deceit, were forced to confront the reality of his actions. They were devastated, heartbroken, and furious. They cut off all financial support to Ryan, forcing him to finally face the consequences of his actions. Later on, he moved back in with them, his tail between his legs, a shadow of his former smug self. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. My wife and I always look forward to our annual trip to our native town back in India. We get to eat flavorful food that makes the food we get back here seem bland, and we get to meet our parents. However, the best part about taking a month-long trip to a faraway country is the fact that we won't have to deal with Derek and his family, who seem hell-bent on making our lives miserable. Derek was our neighbor from the time we moved into our new house 20 years back. He and his wife Carla seemed to be despised by the entire neighborhood, and it did not take long to understand why. It is not uncommon to find their trash bags dumped over our common fence. When asked about it, Derek would always say that they would never dump trash by the fence because it was their fence and they would technically be littering on their own property. This made zero sense to me, but I soon learned that it was pointless arguing with a man that refused to listen. His son Alan was only 11 when we first moved in, so we assumed his arrogant behavior would pass once he attained some maturity, but even after entering his 20s he remains a pain that the entire neighborhood is forced to endure. He is obnoxiously loud and violent, which makes it hard for him to keep a job and be able to move out of his parents' house. His wife was the type of person who would start rumors about the other people who lived on the street for no real reason. My wife often complains to me about how Carla always sits by the porch to judge people. She watches everything like a hawk and never allows people an ounce of privacy. The worst of them all, though, was Derek. He is the kind of man that is extremely short-tempered and thinks he is entitled to everything in the world. He is the reason that the other neighbors were never able to form a community. Every single gathering that took place, he would insert himself into it regardless of whether or not he was invited. He would then proceed to get into a fight which usually turned physical. Eventually, everyone just decided to not have gatherings, however big or small the occasion. This seemed much easier than having to deal with Derek. This year, after our month-long vacation, my wife and I were rather excited to go back home due to the new opportunities that awaited her at her workplace. There was still a slight disappointment in my heart that we would have to go back to living next door to Derek's family, but nothing prepared me for what was waiting back home. We came back to find a giant hole dug up on our front lawn, and a couple of construction workers seemed to be lining the hole with cement. I rushed over immediately to get them to stop, but they said they were instructed by the landowner to finish building a pool within the end of this week. I was shocked at this statement because I was the landowner and I had asked for no such thing. I was not even here for a month, so that was obviously impossible. After probing further, I discovered that they were hired by Derek. He had told them the land was his, so they had been working on it for the past 3 weeks and the pool was close to completion. I was absolutely furious and headed towards Derek's house, but my wife stopped me and told me it was better to go to the police directly. I realized this was smarter because knowing Derek, he was definitely not gonna listen to a single thing I said. When the workers saw that we had the keys that opened our house, they believed that the property was in fact ours and decided to clear out the area till this matter was resolved. They were not too worried about not being paid for their work because the payment had already been completed. This just made me more angry because it showed the confidence with which Derek had decided that our front yard was his. We called the police and informed them of what had happened. Even they were rather shocked as they had never heard of such a case before. The officer on the other end told me he would send a couple of people over to take a look at what was happening and to speak to Derek. Meanwhile, we were advised to consult a lawyer about what could be done. My sister-in-law, Aya, is an amazing lawyer, but I was not very clear on how to explain the situation. This was when Derek came banging at the door. He was mad that the work on the pool had been stopped. I told him how ridiculous it is that he just started constructing a whole pool in front of my house when I was on vacation, but he said the place now belongs to him according to the adverse possession law. He claimed the fence was his, and since it was on my property for over 12 years, the land now belonged to him. He was visibly getting angrier, but the cops had arrived at this point and he was forced to go back to his place and deal with it in court. I rang up Aya and she explained to me that since the property was not exactly unused by us during the 12-year duration, it would be hard for his claim to stand in court. However, there was a risk of him being able to usurp the portion with the pool if he had a really good lawyer. Our best plan of action was suing him to get the pool removed and to get a restraining order. Our lawyer was significantly better than his, so it did not take very long for us to win this case. Derek was infuriated by the fact that he had to pay us after losing, and he made no effort to hide it. The night after the court hearing, he barged into our house with Ellen by breaking the front door. They each had guns and threatened to shoot unless we agreed to let them finish the pool and use it whenever they pleased. My wife was horrified, but she agreed to their conditions if it meant they would leave us alone. They left after this with a satisfied smirk on their faces, but I was astounded that my wife just let them go. She then showed me her phone and the recording of this whole incident. Footage of Derek threatening us and damaging property, combined with violating the restraining order, was enough to get him locked up for a good long time. We dialed the police number immediately and Derek and Ellen were arrested. The whole neighborhood was relieved that they didn't have to deal with Derek anymore. There would be no more unnecessary fights and no need to restrict people from meeting each other. The best part was that I got the pool finished. He had paid the entire construction amount in the beginning, so that meant I just had to let them complete it and then I would have a free pool in my house. We then got to celebrate being rid of Derek by having a pool party that he could not crash considering he was locked up. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.